بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد سيد المرسلين في كل وقت وحين يا ربنا لك الحمد إلى شرف النبي وآله الفاتحة آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I bring myself to the door of God, in the name of God, closer to me than all my relatives, creator of relationships and the one who nurtures them best. My devotion and my praises flow to God, the guide and nourisher of the soul and conscience of every being. The one Lord, dearer to me than myself, the one to whom I belong, the source of my life, the ground of my being, and the origin of my identity. I sing the name of my Lord, I sing the name of my King, King of my heart, owner of my soul, judge of my intentions, the truth of my interactions, and the sincerity of my engagement with Him. My Lord and nourisher of my soul, here I am in your court, honored by this audience with you. I stand before your majesty. I beseech you on my behalf, and on behalf of all creation, echoing the eternal voice of all conscious beings, those who came before me, those who are living with me, and those who will come after me, I say, our journeying is to you, and in you we find our strength, assistance, and support. You light the way, and you give the will. You are the end, and you are the means. Guide us on your straight path. Lead us in your good way, the way of eternal bliss, walked by your beloved ones, those who awaken to become witnesses to your abundant grace, who appreciate and fully experience your blessings. I seek refuge in your eternal grace and everlasting light, my Lord and teacher of my soul, from being of those who are blind to your beauty and goodness, who stay deaf to your call of love, those who consume, dishonor, devalue, or take your gifts for granted. I seek refuge in your eternal grace and everlasting light, my Lord and teacher of my soul, from being of those whose resistance has made them experience divine gifts as deprivation, for whom blessings become barriers, and opportunities for guidance and closeness to you become the very cause of their severance. I knock at your door, my Lord. I am at your threshold. Do not let me turn away. May this door never become an obstacle. Open my being to you and open the way for me. Amen. Amen. Bismillah. Alhamdulillah. So today we're continuing to talk about the illuminations or the lustrations or the wudhu, as we call it in Arabic. Before we start, let's do introductions. Some of you are new here. We have at least 2 new people and 3 people who have been here before but are visiting after a long time. Alhamdulillah. So why don't we do intros?
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Noor.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Khairia.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Sophie.
From France.
Assalamu alaikum, Fatima from Toronto.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Miriam from Toronto.
Assalamu alaikum, I am Farishta, recently moved from Toronto to Ottawa.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
It's your first time here?
Yes.
Welcome.
Assalamu alaikum, I am Dan from here in Ottawa.
Alaikum salam. Welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Asim from Toronto, but Ottawa's home to me.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Terry.
Assalamu alaikum, Ruwaina.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Haley.
Alhamdulillah, nice to have you with us today, Haley. You didn't have your other class today? No, it was yesterday. Okay. Tamam. All right. So we're talking about wudhu, Wudu is often translated into English as ablutions, which is a bit of a heavy word. As you can hear, the sound of it is a bit heavy. Wudu comes from diya in Arabic, and that's why we choose to use the word lustrations or illuminations, because diya in Arabic means light. And we talked a couple of classes ago about how the reality of wudu, the reality of washing your body with water before you pray, is that it's actually light. It's actually the metaphysical reality of that action is light. And the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may the light of God continue to connect us to him, he spoke of this when he said that in the akhirah, in the afterlife, he will recognize us by the light that's illuminated from the areas of our body that we used to touch with the water of wudu. So in the afterlife, when you don't have an actual body, in the same way that we have a body here, it'll be some kind of a form of a body. It won't be the physical body that we have, but it will be some representation of that, and you will be essentially a soul, but you will be recognized by the light that's emanating from you. And we said that that's what we should bring to mind when we are making wudu, so that it doesn't become a mere empty ritual or robotic action, and also so that we can honor it and be joyful about it, even though many of our situations, especially when we're at school or work, wudu can be the most challenging part of the whole day. It's figuring out where to find a washroom where you can start to do all of this stuff with water that is so unusual that nobody else can figure out what you're doing. So I remember when I was working in a full-time job in the government, actually, and it was the most challenging thing to find a washroom where I could actually, carry out this beautiful spiritual ritual and not feel very stressed about it and not feel very concerned about, startling other people with it. So it's such a beautiful thing, so we need to keep in mind, even though it can be challenging in some of our circumstances to actually carry it out, reminding ourselves that it's about light and it's about connection to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it's about something that's far beyond the mere getting wet of your body. Helps you to come to it with that joy and with that mindfulness and heartfulness. So this is now about the etiquettes of wudu, or the art of making wudu, in the words of Imam Al-Ghazali from the book The Beginning of Guidance. This is a translator's note, so it's I told you that it was Sheikh Hamdi and I who translated this particular treatise that you have in front of you here in paper form. So this is our note. All right, translator's note. In the following section, Imam Al-Ghazali advises us on how to be mindful in the course of performing the frequent daily act of illumination. He advises us to make many supplications of God as we perform this action. He advises us to keep God in mind even as we interact with water and our limbs. Some readers might object that their school of thought does not allow for uttering any speech during the wudu. So there are schools of thought that teach you, as we've mentioned before, what is called fiqh. Who can give me the definition I gave last time of fiqh? Very simple definition. That's a very high definition. That was a very simple layman's definition. Well, fiqh is the how-to. It's the how-to of ibadah. Ibadah is devotion to God. So devotion to God is things like praying, the meditational practice of the 5 daily prayer, the pilgrimage, fasting. Those are all devotional practices. They're all ways of expressing your devotion to God, to the divine. And fiqh is the how-to. So fiqh will tell you, okay, how many cycles or how many, how do I actually pray the prayer? And what time do I start fasting at? What time in the morning? And what time should I end? That's called fiqh. That whole rules. You can call it rules. Rules is, the how-to, right? The guide of how to do those things. And it's on a very physical level. It's not giving you the spiritual how-to. It's not telling you where your heart should be. It's just telling you the steps to take in order to bring the devotion into being in your life. There are schools of thought in this. So there are different scholars who've spoken about the how-to of prayer. So some scholars will say, for example, you hold your hands in the prayer at your sides. That's one school of thought, says that. Another school of thought says you hold your hands here in like your chi, where your chi is, where your center of energy is. It's two different schools of thought. And in these how-to, there are small differences like that about where you hold your hands or things like that. And we're saying in this translator's note that there are some schools of thought that say you shouldn't speak at all when you're actually engaging in the wudu. When you're washing yourself, you shouldn't say anything. Just quietly you should do it. What we're going to find Imam Al-Ghazali telling us is all kinds of things that you should be saying, speaking to God. So don't get worried about the fact that in your school of thought it might be that you're not supposed to say anything. You can still say these things with your heart, okay? So we just wanted to provide that for people who might get freaked out when they hear about all of these prayers that are going to come. All right? And some people might also object and say it's not practical for me to make a prayer at every single step of the ablution. Right? Like I said, some people are pressed for time, they're at work, they're at school, they're worried about someone walking into the washroom. So that's fine. Just take these things as inspiration. Because our goal in this, or our objective in this class is to really reflect on the inner meanings and the inner dimension of devotion to God. Especially for people for whom devotion has become somewhat robotic and mired in a kind of sense of it being about rules and of it being about obligation and duty, and they've forgotten the beauty of it. So Imam Al-Ghazali, as we mentioned, he's the author who is all about ihya. He's all about giving life back to things. He's all about, let's take that thing that seems dead in your life and let's revive it. How? With a greater sense of mindfulness, with a greater sense of heartfulness, and of course, one of the most profound ways to bring about heartfulness is to speak to God in whatever you're doing, whatever it happens to be. It's the easiest thing in the world, and it's the thing we often forget to do. We talk to ourselves, we talk in our heads, we talk to each other, and it's very rare to find a person who is in conversation with God and is able to even complain to God about just the little things like, we say, oh my God, like for me today, oh my God, my car is covered with snow and it's cold now. So now the snow is hard on the car. We say, oh my God, but we're not really talking to him about these things. And really the people who are enjoying their relationship with God are those who can bring every little thing to him. And we know this from the companions of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said, we used to even talk to God if the strap of our sandal was broken. Even that we would bring to God. There was nothing that was too petty to bring and address to God. And that's a very personal relationship with God that is being described there. All right, the quest that Imam Al-Ghazali is undertaking is to describe the art of being that will lead to God consciousness. That's his aim in what he's writing about. He's trying to help us come to a state of God consciousness, of awareness of the Creator. Thus, these supplications or these prayers are meant to be woven into each step of the wudu, of the illumination, in order to elevate each act and place it in its proper spiritual context, allowing it to affect not just the body, but also the soul. The ablution, after all, can be reduced to a mere ritual of complete meaninglessness. Just like any act can be reduced to complete meaninglessness. if we don't have an intention, if we don't know what we're really doing, then it becomes meaningless with time. Unlike other kinds of cleaning processes, the purpose of wudu is not to remove physical impurity, but rather to take you from the state of being unable to stand before God in meditation to being ready to stand before Him in meditation, right? That's the purpose of the wudu. You're not dirty. There's nothing on your arms that needs to be removed, right? There's nothing on your face that actually has to be removed. It's not like the other kinds of cleaning that you do of your body. When you take a shower or when you go to the bathroom, it's not that. Wudu is not that. Wudu is about taking you from one spiritual state to another. From a state of not being ready to stand in front of God and have a conversation with Him in the form of salah, which is the deep connection, to being ready to do that. So if that's not really something for the soul, then what is it? Right? Even the physical aspect of it tells you that there's got to be more to this than just the water, because the water is not really doing anything for me. My arms are clean, my hands are already clean, my feet are already clean. Alhamdulillah. This alone should be indication enough that it is a spiritual cleansing, nothing less. As such, it is rich with significance. Nonetheless, because of the frequency and routineness with which we perform our ablutions, the spiritual relevance of it easily slips between the cracks as we go about our worship in foggy obliviousness. Imam Al-Ghazali's guidance to accompany each movement of the ablution with a supplication is a method of reconnecting us to the divine, and it brings us back into mindfulness and awareness of the fact that every action is in the presence of God and for a purpose. A word of caution. These supplications are not meant to be reduced to yet another empty ritual, to be rattled off by the tongue and dispensed with. One must not turn these powerful words into yet another empty action. That too can be the case if we're not careful. What is the art then of introducing these supplications into one's ablution without contravening the manners of ablution as prescribed by any school of thought, and without protracting the illumination or the wudu beyond what is manageable? That is, it becomes a really long thing because you're trying to recite all these different prayers. Okay, what is the art of doing that? It is to utter these words simultaneously with the actions instead of stopping after every action, and speak them not with the tongue but with the heart. Okay, while it may not have been the practice of the Prophet ﷺ to make all of these supplications in each and every wudu, these supplications were gathered by Imam Al-Ghazali from the practice of the companions of the Prophet and the righteous Salihin, may God be most pleased with them. And of course, Imam Al-Ghazali himself is of the latter, that is, the people who are close to God. Therefore, we respect what he hands down to us of practice as being something that is blessed and beautiful. All right. Does everyone here know what we're even talking about when we say wudu? I know we have some new people. Does anyone want to demonstrate wudu? Do you know what we're talking about when we talk about this wudu thing? Yeah? You know? Okay, good. I just hope you're not. That's right, yeah. We'll give you the mic so people online can hear you.
Like the purpose. Oh, sorry. Yeah. The purpose for the wudu is to become mentally ready for praying.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's not only washing or cleaning, like
That's right.
physically. Using the water. It's not that.
Absolutely, and thank you for saying that. So it's not only a spiritual preparation, but of course it's mental as well. These things are related. And often we are, of course, we're busy in our day and we have a lot of stuff going on in our heads, and that's actually the title of this course, that it's not all in your head. so there's a mental aspect to it as well, of just calming the mind. And especially when you force yourself to say these prayers with the actions, that really helps to engage and focus the mental on something other than whatever you were thinking of. Because it's very easy. I think most of us, when we do our ablutions, we're thinking about other than the prayer. We're not really actually preparing for the prayer. We're thinking about whatever we were doing before, the phone call that we had, the meeting that we were in, the task that is almost due, whatever. And then we just start making our wudu. Oh, it's time to pray the midday prayer. And we miss the opportunity of truly preparing ourselves and truly detoxing in that moment from all the myriad thoughts that are taking up our mental space. So thank you for saying it's a mental preparation as well. Appreciate that. All right. Okay. Bismillah. So, Bismillah. The first advice of Imam Al-Ghazali is coming from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, from the practice of the Prophet, is that as soon as you are ready to start your illumination, you should brush your teeth. You should brush your teeth. For it is purifying to the mouth, pleasing to the Creator, and it is something that it calls the angels, it calls the presence of angels to have good breath, to have clean breath. The Prophet ﷺ would say that he avoided eating raw garlic and onions and things like that because he wanted his breath to be clean, and he would be reciting the word of God, and he wanted that to be something that was, even on a physical level, pleasing to the angels, pleasing to other people around him. And it's very important to consider that. That's why we say when you come and pray, especially when you're in a gathering, like a congregational prayer, make sure that your clothes are smelling clean. In the fiqh, in the how-to, there's actually a rule in one of the schools that if you are a fishmonger, you can't come and pray in congregation, ever. Because you can't get rid of that smell of the fish. And it bothers other people. And it's so important that people really get the maximum opportunity to connect to God when it's so hard for people to do that to begin with. So I'm not saying that if you're a fishmonger, you can come here. I'm not going to deny you coming, but it's just an extreme example to give you a sense that, subhanAllah, it's so important to think about that you perfume yourself before you come and pray, especially when you're in the presence of other people. And if you're not in the presence of other people, you are in the presence of God, you are saying the name of God, you are in a conversation with God, and there are angels who are around you. So brushing the teeth is very important. All right, and then, this is, of course, in a different world than the world that we have. He says, sit for the ablution, facing the direction of prayer. Now, most of us, we're just going to be facing the direction of the faucet, the water faucet in front of us. But I want you to imagine what that world is like. And maybe you've traveled to the Muslim countries, or maybe you can just imagine how it was. They would not have, especially in the time of Imam Al-Ghazali, they didn't have flowing water coming out of a faucet. They would actually prepare the amount of water that would be needed to conduct the illumination, and that's it. And they would sit, and they would face the direction of prayer, and then they would begin this process. We've been lucky enough to spend time in spiritual retreats, and we had a particular retreat that was for women, and we held it in just north of Gatineau. And it was so lovely because we couldn't actually use their sink to make the wudu in, because they complained about us the last time because it was too much water collecting on the sink. So we did actually follow the actual proper practice of the Prophet ﷺ, and we just would fill a little cup like this, and it was enough to make wudu. That's enough. You actually only need about this much to do the whole process. And that was the best experience of wudu I've ever had in my life. It was so sweet. It was so lovely. It was so meaningful. Huh? So you're probably going to ask me, why don't you do that still? Inshallah. Inshallah. The convenience is so alluring, unfortunately, the convenience of just turning on the top. But you can try to do this somehow when you're at home. You know, sometimes you can find a way. Some people, they actually they do that in their bathtub, and it's possible if you use a cup, if you use a little bucket. So there you are. All right. Start by imploring God with the sincere words, in the name of God, the most embracing, the one who is closer to us than our own selves. O my Lord, I take refuge with you from the incitements of those who are evil, and I seek your protection, O my Lord, from their being present with me. Now this is a very important thing. This idea of seeking God's protection from those who are evil, from devils and so on, this is something that it's part of our belief, and we often forget about it in our material world today. But it's a very present aspect that will always come out whenever you're hearing about the daily recitations of the Prophet ﷺ, especially in transitions. The transition from sleep to waking up, the transition from being awake to going to sleep, the transition of leaving your home to go outside and then coming back home. It's very common in all of these transitional prayers to seek refuge in God from anything that could be evil or harmful, because those things exist and those things are around us. And my teachers would often say that there is no space in the world that is a vacuum. There are angels or there are devils. Depends on what the people there are doing. So if you go to a place where there is wrongdoing, where there is sin taking place, where there is abuse of other people, like a nightclub, which is from beginning to end abuse. Abuse of people's money, abuse of people's weakness, abuse of people's vulnerability, abuse of people's worst instincts, whatever. That kind of a place is charged with what you would, in our language, call negative energy. And you feel heaviness when you go to a place like that. And a place where there is worship and where there is cleanliness and where there is purity of relationships and where people are not consuming one another, where people are looking at each other with respect for one another's dignity, that place is full of angels. And you feel it, and you feel better when you're in a place like that. And there are people who become like that. People who become angel magnets. And there are also people who become magnets of darkness, unfortunately. And that's why you feel different with different people. With some people, you feel like after you've been with them, there's a heaviness, there's a weight that's taken off your own shoulders. Even if you didn't tell them all your problems, just feel lighter after having been with them. And you feel a sort of skip in your step, an extra energy. And there are other people, just by being around them, you feel uneasy, you feel uncomfortable. And it's not on an intellectual level, it's something quite deep inside you. It's on a soul level. So, we say this because this is now a transitional point. We're preparing ourselves to enter into the sacred conversation with God. So we want to make sure that there's no negative influence around us. What is the role of the devil? The Prophet ﷺ said, you will never see the devil, but you will perceive his presence. How? By negative thoughts. That's how you know that he's there. That's how you know the presence of the devil. You will never actually see the devil. But his presence is manifested in how you actually feel. You feel negative, you feel low, you feel tired. When it comes to actually doing good, you don't feel the energy to do it. Or you also start to hear, as we've talked about many times before, you start to hear bad things about yourself or about other people. This is the influence of the devil, because people in their normal state give each other the benefit of the doubt, give each other room, give each other grace. But there's another element that encourages us to shut all that down and remove that margin of grace and of the benefit of the doubt, and that's the devil. He spurs us on to think the worst about each other and also about our own selves, to give up easily, to feel guilt and to feel loss and to feel incapacity. God tells us in the Quran that الشيطان يعدكم الفقر. Shaitan, the devil, Satan, his role is to threaten you that you won't be able to accomplish things, or that you don't have enough resources or capacity to make it to the end. In anything. In a relationship, in a marriage, in your journey to God, in a project that you're trying to accomplish. That nagging voice of, you won't be able to do it. It's not possible. It's not going to work. That's not your voice. That's not you. That's that influence. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. And that's why we seek refuge. Because we don't want to have our power that God has put in us compromised. Because we have great things to accomplish in this world. And not least to pray a true prayer. To pray a true prayer is one of the greatest things we can ever accomplish. And we want to make sure that we come with all of that sense of strength and confidence into the presence of God. And this prayer that was mentioned, it's a verse from Quran. O my Lord, I take refuge with you from the incitements of those who are evil or devils, and I seek your protection, O my Lord, from their being present with me. This is a verse from Quran. And then you start. You wash your hands 3 times. And again, this is the old way. So if you want to do it the old way, you wash your hands 3 times before you place them in the basin from which you'll be doing the rest of the wudu. So what they would do is they would wash their hands just with a cup or with a small amount of water 3 times, and then they would have this basin. It wouldn't be so narrow like this. It would be wider, and then you would scoop with one hand to do the rest of the ablution. You don't pour. You understand what I'm saying? So first you wash your hands 3 times, and then you will use one of those hands, the right hand, to scoop from a small basin to complete the rest of the ablution or illumination. All right. As you wash your hands, ask your Lord, O my Lord, truly I ask of you good fortune and blessing, and I seek refuge in you from bad fortune and from loss. Then make the intention of lifting the state of impurity or fulfilling the requirements to be able to pray. So here is where you're already starting to make your intention about prayer. Okay? You're starting to think about prayer. All right. Then you take a handful of water and rinse your mouth 3 times. In doing so, you should exaggerate to make the water reach the back of your mouth to your throat, except if you're fasting, in which case you should be more gentle in that movement. So the footnote is, if you're fasting and you exaggerate rinsing your mouth, you might swallow water. That's the thing. If you swallow water by accident, it doesn't break your fast. If you swallow water by accident when you're doing the illumination, it doesn't break your fast. So that's just a footnote for people who worry about that sort of thing, which we should. All right. And then say, O my Lord, help me with the recitation of your book and much remembrance of you, and establish me in strength with the word that stands firm in this life and then the next. So this is also from the Quran. This is from Surah Ibrahim, verse 27. So as you're washing your mouth, what you should be saying is, O my Lord, help me with the recitation of your book and much remembrance of you, dhikr, kathir, and establish me in strength with the word that stands firm in this life and in the hereafter. Why? These are all things related to the mouth. These are all things related to the mouth. Give me a mouth that recites your word. Give me a mouth that finds it easy to recite the word of God and wants to. Give me the strength in my mouth to make this tongue of mine want to recite your names and your praises all the time. And finally, give me a kind of mouth that speaks good words, firm words, qawlan sadid, a good, strong, firm word. We need firm words. We need words that stand strong in this life and the next. What's the most important one of those words? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. That's a word, that's a kalima. All right? So it's so beautiful because he's reminding you what your mouth is for. Subhanallah. So, O my Lord, help me with the recitation of your book and much remembrance of you, and establish me in strength with the word that stands firm in this life and the next. So make my words words that are firm and true, and that stand for me in this world and the next. Not empty words, not words of frivolity, not words that are half lies, but true words, words of meaning, words that I can speak in moments of in critical moments, that I say the good and right thing. There's a beautiful story about a story from the old times about a king and his daughter, princess, and he wanted her to get married, or she wanted to get married, and everybody wanted to marry her, so he decided to have a competition, a contest, and he said, okay, whoever can bring me the most beautiful thing in the world, you will be a contender for the hand of my daughter. That's how he started the contest. So people went all over, all these men went all over the kingdom. Some of them found this rare flower, another person found a jewel, another person found whatever, different beautiful things. And they all lined up, and they were each one was showing the king, and he was evaluating with his ministers. And then at the end of the line, there was a very poor faqir. Faqir, it means someone who is a seeker of God. Very poor man. And the king was like, okay, what are you doing here? You're dressed in rags, and you don't really look like a contender for the royal hand. He came and he showed the king a box. And the king said, okay, show me what you have. He opened the box, and there was a cow's tongue inside. And the king was revolted, and he said, what is this? This is ugly and gross. How is this the most beautiful thing in the world? And that wise seeker of God said, because with one word from the tongue, you can heal a broken heart. You can lift a person who feels down. You can change a person's day. You can bring two people who are fighting together, all with the tongue. There's nothing more beautiful than what comes from the tongue, the words. And the king was blown away by that answer, and he was like, okay, all right, fine. All right, you win this round, but there's more. So the next day, he announced to everybody, now I want you to bring me the ugliest thing in the world. And so they all went off again and brought different things. I don't know what they brought this time, but again, that seeker of God in his rags showed up, and he had the same box in his possession. And he opened it, and he showed the king, and again, it was the cow's tongue. And the king said, are you playing me for a fool? Yesterday you said this was the most beautiful thing, now it's the ugliest thing? What is this? Explain yourself. And the man said, yes, just as the tongue can be the most beautiful thing, it can also be the ugliest thing, and the most painful thing, and the thing that lashes another person, and breaks a heart, and destroys confidence, and ruins relationships, just with one word. And the king was, khalas, okay, you win. It's because it's true. It's wisdom, it's truth. So, subhanAllah, we make our illuminations at least 5 times a day, and we have this profound opportunity to really ask God to make our tongues instruments of beauty and instruments of peace, because we really are very at ease in things that we say, and sometimes we're not aware of the damage that we're doing. And in fact, Imam Al-Ghazali has, I think, another whole book called The Prohibitions of the Tongue, the way to control your tongue. And this comes from the Prophet ﷺ, who said to Sayyidina Mu'adh, be careful with your tongue. Be careful with your tongue, because it can bring you, it can actually ruin your whole destiny, just from the things that you say. And also from the silence that you keep when you should be speaking. Sometimes that's what we do. We decide to be silent when it's important to defend someone, when it's important to correct a misconception. We just go along with it, we let it go. And that's also a dangerous thing. So, subhanAllah, it's something that is, we take it for granted, but we have an opportunity to really seek guidance in that area of our life. when we carry out this illumination practice. So say, "O my Lord, help me with the recitation of your book and with much remembrance of you, and establish me in strength with the word that stands firm in this life and the hereafter." Take a handful of water now for your nose. Draw it in and blow out the mucus from your nose. Do so 3 times. As you draw in the water, seek your Lord with this plea, "O my Lord, let me smell the scent of the heavens, and may you be pleased with me." "O my Lord, let me smell the scent of the heavens while you are pleased with me." You're already projecting into the future, you're projecting into a time beyond this life when you'll be able to smell the scent of heaven, and you'll be in the direct presence of God, and you're tuning yourself and you're orienting yourself to that. So profound, it's so beautiful. And of course, there are people who can smell the scent of the heavens even in this life. There are people like that. So as you're drawing the water into your nose to cleanse, you're saying, "Oh my Lord, let me smell the scent of heaven while you are pleased with me." And as you blow the water out, you're going to recite, "Oh my Lord, I seek refuge in you from the foul stench of the eternal fire, hellfire. And I seek refuge in you from the evil of that abode." So the opposite. And of course, we have mentioned before that we're not talking about physical smells or even necessarily physical places. When we talk about heaven and hell, these are manifestations of the state of the human being even before they leave this world, what they attach their heart to, what they invested their life in, what they put their energy towards, and whatever happens to you then once you have this material world sort of dissipate, it's your own reality. It's the state that you already chose for yourself. So that's why we say that there are people even in this world, they can already smell the scent of heaven, because it's not a physical thing. It's not like a place that, "Oh, how did that smell reach me? It's so far away." It's not far away in time either. It's a state. And it's just beyond the veil in a way. It's a dimension that's already there. It's just that you can't perceive it with the senses that you have that allow you to exist in this material world and be successful and be safe. And you need your physical sense of smell, you need your hearing to be safe even. But those things are not what we're talking about. This kind of smell is what Imam Al-Ghazali talks about when he's talking about the senses of the heart. The heart has senses. It can see, it can smell, it can perceive, it can hear. And that's why we want to have that kind of hearing, that hearing of the heart. Otherwise, this hearing, it doesn't last. You can't remember everything that comes into your physical ears. But what goes into the ears of your heart, it stays forever. It stays forever, and it motivates you, and it encourages you, and it gives you the light to see what needs to be done and how to act. That's what we want to open up, that kind of hearing and that kind of smell, sense of smell. Take a handful of water for your face, and with it wash from the beginning of the flat part of your forehead, the flat part, so here it's the round part, and here it's the flat part. Okay? Wash your face from the flat part of the forehead to the end point of the chin, up and down, and from ear to ear. So you're washing your whole face, basically. Make sure the water reaches your temples, which is the point. Yeah, this is the point here. These are your temples, so make sure the water covers this area. And from the top of your ear to the corner of your temple. So cover this part, wash this part as well with water. Make sure it gets wet. All right. And if you have a beard, then you have to wash your beard as well. If you have a beard, make sure that the water reaches the roots of the hair of your beard. As you wash your face, speak to your Creator, saying, "O my Lord, illuminate my face on the day that you make radiant the faces of your friends with your light. O my Lord, illuminate my face On the day you make radiant the faces of your friends with your light. And do not shroud my face in darkness on the day you shroud the faces of those who are distant from you in darkness. This is one of the most powerful things. Our face is such a holy part of us. Right? Our face is like us. That's who we are. That's how we know each other. Subhanallah. And we ask to see the face of God. And we ask to see the face of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Your face is like everything. And when we pray, that's the part that disappears. You efface yourself. At the height of the prayer, you efface yourself, right? In the sujood, in the prostration, you can't see your face anymore. Your face is to the ground, face to face with another reality. God says that's when you're closest to me. What does that mean? That's when you're face to face with me. But the face is always the most honored part of a person. That's why we say, Karamallahu wajhu ala, about Sayyidina Ali, the beloved companion of the Prophet ﷺ, who never bowed his face to other than God. And that's why we say God honored his face, because his face was only ever in prostration to the one who created us. And so this is the heart of the wudu, we can say also. This is like the high point of the wudu, is when you're washing your face and you're asking God to illuminate your face on the day when He makes the faces of those who are His friends radiant with His light. That day could be the final day. Of course, it's described in Quran, in the Word of God, that at the end of this whole existence, this worldly existence, when we're in the presence of God, faces will be shining. Some faces will be shining and some faces will be shrouded in darkness. This is from the Quran. We ask that on that day our faces be those that are shining. Ameen. And also in this life, to have faces that are shining with goodwill towards other people, with good vibes towards other people, faces that are welcoming, faces that are adorned with a prophetic smile, faces that are not about attracting other people to yourself, but attracting people to God. There are people whose faces are they're just a stage to remind people of God. There's nothing left of them in it anymore. Right? When we're young, or when we're people of dunya, when we're people who are entranced by this material world, we use our face to attract people to us. That's why people wear makeup. That's why people pay so much attention to their faces. It's not for that face to be just a mirror of the light of God. Most people are not interested in that. But when you reach a stage of recognizing the presence of God, you only want your face to be a mirror that reminds people, I have a creator, the light, and nur. It's not about you. You don't want it to be about you, right? And that's also something that we can ask for in this world, to have our faces illuminated, not so that we can, have people tell us, you have so much nur in your face. Have you heard that before? Don't say that to people. It's a very bad pickup line that really lousy people use. Sorry? You get that a lot? Oh, that's okay. For you it's different because it's your name. But it's not something you can see with your eyes, that's the thing. So it's not, when people tell you, oh, you have so much nur in your face, maybe it's just the light, the way the actual light is reflecting off your makeup that day, I don't know. But it's much deeper, So we're not asking for that, for people to see that in us. Be careful, don't want that for other people to be like, oh my God, you must be so pious, you must be so good. No, it's just, I want my face to be a reflection point through which people can observe the presence of the Creator. That's it. All right, so, Bismillah. Where are we? Now, wash your right hand and forearm up to the elbow. Wash your right hand and your forearm up to the elbow. And then wash your left hand and your forearm up to the elbow. Here's a footnote for you. If your ring is so tight that the water doesn't reach under it, you have to move your ring. Just move your ring up and down at this part. because we want water to reach all the parts of your skin. Okay? Remember how the adornment of paradise encompasses the places touched in ablution. So, as you wash your right arm, ask with fervor and from the depth of your heart, "O my Lord, I ask of you, please give me my book of deeds in my right hand. And O my Lord, when you judge me with leniency." Okay? So this is from a tradition, a teaching in Islam, that at the end of this material existence, when we're gathered on the day of reckoning, some people will be called and they will be given their book, which is a record of everything you did in this life, all the deeds, all the words you said, all the silences that you kept, everything is written there. Because we have angels who are constantly writing, Kiram Katibin. They are the noble writers, the noble scribes, as they're described in the Quran, and they're writing all the time. Everything you're doing, every word you say, it's being recorded in this book. And if you receive your book in your right hand, then that is an omen of good to come. That's a bushra, that's a glad tiding that things are good for you. And if you receive your book in your left hand or in that way, some say from behind, so it's not even given to you in a noble way, then that's because your book is full of things that are not noble and not worthy of any respect. Okay? So we ask that God would give us our book in our right hand. And we remember this. We're again projecting into the other world and into the other dimension where we have to think about, what am I sending forward for that day? What is it? What's going on? What are the things that are being recorded about me? We think, so many times before we stand in front of an audience or stand in front of a camera, or sometimes if you send voice notes on WhatsApp, some people, they'll actually record it, on their own they have their own little group just with them in it on WhatsApp. You can do that, by the way. And then they'll just send it to themselves and they'll listen to it before they send it to someone else. We're so careful because that's a recording. That's khalas, it's done. Now it's recorded. If they listen to it and there's something in it that's not nice, then you can't take it back. Even if you want to delete it, they've heard it. That's it. So we take so much time about those things, and yet we're being recorded all the time. And as Sheikh Hamdi has been saying lately, a very beautiful teaching, that there's nothing that helps us to understand the spiritual world and the other world and the akhirah world, the hereafter world, better than technology today. So often our teachers would say, this is going to be basically some USB is going to be plugged in and the whole tape is going to be there from beginning to end. You've been recorded. Just like we know we're being recorded in certain buildings and wherever we know that there's security cameras. But try to imagine that in the spiritual sense, that there's constantly cameras on you. There's surveillance, yes, you're being watched. You're being watched. So have some awareness of that. And as we've said before, it's not a menacing surveillance. It's not that God is waiting for you to make mistakes. It's not that God is looking for your mistakes. We've talked about that many times, that in this world, it's a world of God's grace. It's a world of blessing. It's a world of mercy. It's not a world of judgment. That will come. The judgment comes eventually. But this is a world of making mistakes and making up for your mistakes. You're not supposed to be perfect. But God is reminding us that you do have angels who are writing down what you say. And it is important that if you make a mistake, that you take the means to make amends for that mistake. And of course they say about the angels that when you've done something wrong, you've said something mean to someone, or you've ignored someone, or whatever it is, the angels actually wait before they write that down. When you do a good deed, they write it down immediately. When you do something bad, they give you time. They give you time and the expectation and the hope that you will repent before they put the pen to paper. So they say they give you until the end of the day. And that's why really this idea of don't let the sun go down on your fight or on your whatever, it's so important. It's actually a very important spiritual teaching. Make sure that as the day comes to an end, and that's why in our tradition, in the Islamic tradition, before Maghrib, before the sunset, we're invited to spend that time in prayer, meditation, because it's coming to an end now. And that book, that page in the book is going to be turned. It doesn't mean you can't repent tomorrow, but it's much easier to repent before it was even written down. Take advantage of that opportunity. So it's a very holy time, the time right before sunset, because in the Islamic paradigm, sunset is the end of the day. It's the official end of the day. So for us now, we're already in Friday today. All right? The other thing I was going to mention about faces is that God, Most High, tells us in a hadith Qudsi, which is a hadith in which God speaks directly to us. He says, "O child of Adam, you have spent years beautifying that which people see, your face. You spent so much time trying to make it beautiful, making sure it's clean, making sure whatever, and almost no time beautifying that which I see. Your heart, your inner. Your inner is what God sees. He doesn't see your physical, he sees your physical form, but he doesn't judge you by that, or he doesn't evaluate you by that, or he doesn't engage with you based on your physical form. Human beings do often, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will engage with you based on what's in your heart. And that's what he sees, and that's what we need to take time to beautify. All right, I'm going to end with this one. So we say, as we're washing our arms, "O my Lord, I beg of you, please give me my book of deeds in my right hand, and O my Lord, judge me with leniency." And as you wash your left arm, implore with your heart, "O my Lord, I seek your refuge from your giving me my book of deeds in my left hand or from behind." Okay, so we're about halfway through the illustration. Do you have any questions or comments? You're taking a class in the how-to right now. Yes. So.
Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to thank you for doing this. It's actually really beautiful, and it's timely for me because I am doing the fiqh class, and we're learning about tahara, like purity, and what makes purification. So what makes things pure, what makes things impure, and we're leading up into the conversation around wudhu, right, around illumination, in preparation for prayer. So it's really beautiful. And wudhu's been something that I've always historically had issues with, because it was such a burden when you're out of the house, such a burden, to be like at the mall or at work or at school where there's only public washrooms, and it's such a distinct ritual. So you can't cut corners, right? You can't just decide, okay, I'm not going to do my feet today, right? You can't decide that you're not going to do your hair, right? You have to do everything, and you have to do it in sequence. And when you're faced with that, a lot of times you battle with yourself, right? And it's the wudhu that keeps you, that makes you delay your prayer. So it feeds into the prayer, which feeds into your relationship with God. So it becomes like this vicious kind of cycle that you get into, where you become, it messes everything up. Those fears and that burden, it messes everything up. So it took me a long time to become comfortable with wudhu. And you actually helped me a lot with this, letting us know in the previous halaqah about the amount of water that needs to be used, right? That we don't have to run the tap and just use all this water. We can actually use just a little bit of water and find even like a private corner and do your wudu like that, as long as the water is fresh and it's just, it's not, it's pure water. So
tea or something.
and it's been really beautiful to learn these things that we didn't learn previously, it was always about the fiqh, right? About this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And if you don't do it this way, then you're out of luck, right? Yeah, it's invalid.
So you become like wudu resistant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely.
Water resistant.
Completely. Yeah.
You have to do all the steps. There's still a lot of steps.
There are steps. Oh yeah, there's the shorter version, but there are still distinct steps to it, right? So I really appreciate now at this point Wudhu has become something very different for me. But
I mean, the steps that you still have to do are the ones that are the hardest ones. I mean.
Yeah. No. It's
if you have that feeling about it that it's hard, right? So yeah.
So alhamdulillah, it's nice. It's nice to always, and it's funny because you learn this when you're really young, and then you pick it up again when you're older and you want to learn the fiqh of it, right? Like on your own.
Yeah.
And then, like I find periodically through my life, like I've all of a sudden become, you just start picking up on it again.
That's good.
And you can never learn enough about it, and you can never. There's always the depths to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like all this stuff I know technically, but there's like deeper levels of meaning to it every time you hear about it. So it's really beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And if you didn't write down everything that was being described in those prayers, just start with taking into your heart the principle, the idea of connecting to God and expanding your consciousness beyond just the moment of, okay, this is my arm, or even just, like I said, your consciousness is often stuck in whatever you were doing before, and bring your consciousness into those metaphysical realities of meeting God. So you're about to meet God in the prayer, and you are actually about to meet God in the prayer because you want to meet God in the next life. That's why you pray. God says that in Quran, that the prayer is difficult for people except for those who know that they're going to meet God. When you know you're going to meet God, then the prayer itself is it's like, a taste of what's to come, and a preparation for what's to come, a beautiful preparation. So here it makes a lot of sense to be thinking about those realities as you're doing the illumination practice, because they're both meetings, the ultimate meeting and then the meeting that's here in this worldly existence, the 5 times meeting. Subhanallah. Yes.
Fatah was talking about how the teaching about using less water is actually more barakah, is easier for when you're at work or something. You can just have a small cup, and if you have some privacy, you can do wudu. But for in situations when you're at home and there isn't that kind of awkwardness or anything, I remember being taught, and I can't remember if it's a hadith or what it is, that one of the beauties of wudu is that for every drop of water that drops off your body, it's like a sin. It's a sin being washed away. And I remember when I would actually do wudu consciously, because of that, I would actually want to use more water when I'm at home, especially knowing that, we're in a country where it's not like we lack water, or it's a resource that's very scarce or anything like that. It's not like when if I'm in Sudan or something and I know we have our little tub of water, and when that runs out, we don't know when it's going to refill again. So in that situation, I'd always be inclined to kind of let the water run over my arms. And so now I'm just kind of confused over whether it's that less is more or more is more.
Remember what I said to you today? When you get a piece of advice, when you get some advice, you still should check again if it applies to the situation. Mm-hmm. You might think it applies to it, but it doesn't. Remember we talked about that today on WhatsApp? Yes? Do you remember? I just want to know if you remember. It applies here too, that same principle. So yes, I understand how intellectually you arrived at the place where, okay, more, each drop is a sin, so more drops, the better, the more sins. The Prophet ﷺ said something that actually clarifies that and makes it clear that that's not, it's symbolic. It's not about really how many drops. Don't worry about it in that way. Don't try to make this kind of calculation. The Prophet ﷺ actually said that even if you were making wudu, doing your illumination practice over a running river, you're not allowed to waste water. And what is that? I mean, the water is going back in the river. If you're doing all this over a river, where is the waste? And even in that situation, you have to be very careful about the amount that you use. So, yes, we may have a lot of water in Canada at this point, but it's a world situation and it's a blessing. Water is a ni'mah, it's a blessing from Allah. We will be asked about how we use those things. So and as I said, when you actually respect the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, which is about this much water, everything gains meaning, really. And the whole thing is put into its correct framework, and you actually understand how this is so refreshing and so beautiful and so connecting. And when we do it in our own way, not in our own way, but in the way we become accustomed to, you see in many mosques, and even when Muslims are renting community centers, the place is like flooded, the bathroom becomes flooded because of the water. It's not the way. It's very, very far from the practice of the Prophet ﷺ. And then you start to lose the meaning of it and the depth of it and the beauty of it. And you are bringing about harm by wasting water and then, of course, making things unpleasant for other people who need to use the bathroom after you. So, alhamdulillah. Anything else? Dan, I want to hear from you what you thought. Maybe you found all of this strange. You don't feel like you're on the spot, but if you want to say something, then you're welcome.
No, it was a very beautiful presentation. I really enjoyed the way that you described, especially this last bit, describing about the importance of water and how a lot of the symbolism behind it. So thank you for giving this lecture.
Thank you for being here. Absolutely, and that's a great point. Of course, there's so much symbolism behind water in all cultures and in all spiritual traditions. Water represents life, it represents purity, it represents renewal, and certainly that's part of the significance of wudu, especially if you think about the circumstances in which this illumination practice was being taught to people by the Prophet ﷺ in a desert environment where water is so scarce, it's so precious, and still you're being invited to use it 5 times a day. You're one of your most precious commodities. It's not just for eating and drinking now. It's not just for cooking and drinking. It's or for your horses or for your camels. Now it's also to meet God. Now it's also something you have to dedicate. And in fact, they would talk about this, that when you are if you're traveling or you have scarce amount of water, you have to set aside your own wudu water, and you should not give it away. You're responsible. You're responsible to have, if you have water, it's kind of like we always use this teaching, well, my teachers always use this teaching to remind us of the need for spiritual self-care and for looking after yourself spiritually, that in the fiqh, in the how-to, if you only have enough water for yourself to make wudu, you shouldn't give it away. Even if somebody else is in need of water to make wudu, unless they're in need of water because they're going to die, of course you give it to them. But if they don't have enough water to make wudu, you keep that for yourself and you use it, because you have an obligation to look after your spiritual state and presence. And of course there are things to do. We know if you don't have any water, they'll be fine. There's another practice called tayammum that you can do using just dust, and you don't need water, and they'll be fine, they'll be okay. The principle is that it's kind of like when you're on the airplane and they tell you, God forbid if something happens, put your own mask on first and then put the mask on the person next to you or the child or whoever. Because you need to take care of yourself, and spiritually that's very important. As you walk the spiritual path, sometimes if you're a very caring person and you care about your community, you care about your family members, you can get so deeply involved in dealing with their issues that you forget about your own need. And at least there's a need for a basic level of connectivity and presence that you can connect to God. If you spend completely from all of your inner light, you can get exhausted and you can actually end up without enough wudu water to come and pray. And a lot of people who serve in communities, they get into that situation because they give and give and give, and then there's nothing left. And mothers often get into that situation. So take care of your wudu water, and water is something that's sacred, and make sure you set aside water for that purpose, both metaphysically and literally. When I was in Syria, the water used to get cut off, like you said, Noor. It used to get cut off in the summer, and this was back in the day, so like in 98 when I was there. And, everyone would keep water in their bathroom just in big bottles, knowing that you have to take care of it yourself. You can't just be like, oh, the water's off, I'm not going to make wudu. Prepare for these things. Even for wudu, not just for your drinking water, but even wudu, it's your responsibility to look after that. So it's a really interesting relationship with water as a mechanism and as a means to come into a state of presence with God.
I just want to add one more thing that
sure.
The talk about symbolism reminded me of, and segues really well into what you just said. And it reminds me about how there's also the hadith about like when you're angry, the different things to do, and one of them is go do wudu. And I've been thinking about that this week and tried to put it into practice. But it's interesting because if you think about wudu as like a literal routine thing, like then that doesn't make sense. Like go wash off the dirt off your arms. How's that going to help you not be angry? But then you really have to tap into the symbolism of it and the fact that it is about a change from state to state. Otherwise, that wouldn't have been the medicine, the remedy that the Prophet ﷺ gave us to reverse anger.
Beautiful. Thank you for reminding us of that. Yes. So it's also the Prophet, peace be upon him, ﷺ, may Allah connect us to his light, said, if you become angry, go and make wudu. Go and do the illumination practice, and that will take away your anger. It will cool the fire of your anger, because it's water. Cools the fire of your anger. SubhanAllah. It's a metaphysical thing. It's not a literal thing, right? Just as that, anger is symbolized by fire. It's a metaphorical thing. It's a symbolic thing. And subhanAllah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us to have that, also the personality of the water element. The water, there are 5 elements, right, in the old understanding, and the water element is the one that flows with everybody easily. Right? That's the nature of water. Whatever vessel you put it into, it takes the shape of that vessel. It doesn't resist. And water also flows to the lowest points. It doesn't stay high. It flows. It's humble. Right? And it follows whatever path you direct it towards, it will follow it. That's water. May Allah make us like that water, coursing through according to the beautiful steps that he set before us, and giving nourishment to other people and giving life, inshallah, by his will. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wa ila sharaf nabi wa alihi. Al-Fatiha, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Just a reminder to everyone that we have Letters to the Beloved tomorrow, our ceremony. People will be reading their letters. We'll be having our guests from Rabata here, inshallah, from the States, and it's going to be a beautiful experience. We're going to have Ahmed Rose with his ney, his reed flute. We're going to have recitations of poetry, and there's dinner for those who want it. There are lattes for those who want lattes, and it's going to be a beautiful night. So please, all of you come, bring your friends, and if you're out of town online, it'll be live streamed, inshallah, from the Rabata page on Facebook. All right, thank you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Because we'd be like, in a hurry, and he'd be like, hold on, I have to make wudu. And you're like, oh my God. And then he'd go to the bathroom, and he'd take like 20 minutes to do his wudu. Every single time. We left the Can you imagine? But think about it in the sense that if you die, that was his point. If you die, after you step out of the house,